Even demons were submitting to us in your name. Verse 18, he replied in a unique way. Jesus didn't say, well, high five. Way to be celestial. Way to be supernatural. But watch what he said. He goes, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Freeze frame right there for a second. Jesus saw that time, that moment, where God the Father said to Lucifer, the archangel, there's pride in your heart. We're going to read that in Isaiah in a second when we go back to it. There's pride in your heart. And he banished him from heaven. Now watch this. Jesus in this story in Luke chapter 10 uses that action or that memory or that moment in eternity past. He says, you know what? I remember when that happened. I remember seeing that happen. I saw Satan fall like lightning. But look at this word that comes up in the next sentence. Watch this. So I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions, to overcome all of the power of the enemy, and nothing will harm you. So watch this. And I'm a firm believer that if it was available to them, that it's available to us. I don't think that the Bible's written for certain groups, and that it's written for all the white Republicans or something. That's no way. No. No offense to any white Republicans out there. But the Bible is bigger than that. The Bible is for believers. The Bible's for believers. God wants his people to say, because he watched that happen, because Satan's already defeated, because Lucifer's already defeated, I now have authority through Christ. Not because you're just good at it. Not because you passed some certain test, or you've been in church this long, or that, no. Because of the work of the cross. And it made everybody equal. It made everybody on the same level. Those who have their act together and those who are getting their act together. He says, because of Christ, I have authority. He's given us authority. So flip back over into Isaiah chapter 14, because we only got one sentence deep in there, one verse deep in there real quick. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You've been cast down to earth. Forcibly put down to earth. And I love that in Luke, Jesus brought reassurance to people. He goes, I just want to remind you that if you ever get shaky, and I just watched this movie the other day, this old Don Knotts movie. Anybody ever seen The Shakiest Gun in the West? Awesome movie. I remember watching it as a kid. He totally wore the gun, and Don Knotts is hilarious. And he wore the gun, and he kind of had all this fake bravado and everything. And when it came down to it, it was someone else who was shooting his enemies from across the street. And when he shot, he was so surprised that he actually accomplished his mission. But you know what? He was the shakiest gun in the West. But somebody was backing him up who had the real accuracy and power.
Yeah, that's good. Come on.
So when he says, I've given you authority, you may end up walking into the situation, go, well, I believe what God said. And you're holding your way into the shakiest Bible in the West. And you're butchering scriptures. And your Shakespeare's woven in there and stuff. And the enemy's just going, oh my gosh, you're a train wreck. You are absolutely, you're trying to cast out this. You're trying to deal with that. You're trying to pray over this person and everything. And the whole time, if you can just remember, across the street with the rifle, I can be the shakiest Bible in the West, but God is going to take care because my authority rests in him. Yeah. That's where it's at right there. So let's not get prideful. Let's not think we can out-pray so-and-so or outdo or out. We just flat out believe what he said about us and live it. Amen. That our enemy is defeated already. Okay? So we'll move on with that. So he's been cast down, yada, yada. We know that. Here we go, verse 13. Now here's where we start seeing the issue with Lucifer. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I'll ascend above the tops of the clouds, and I will make myself like the Most High. Now watch this. It's actually a noble thing to say, I will make myself like God. Because if your motive is to be better. But you can't make yourself like God at the expense of God. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to make himself like God so he could be God, so he could be that person in charge, in place. And so he starts doing the I will. He starts saying the I will. He starts declaring the I will. And that's not the terminology of the kingdom. The terminology of the kingdom is what? Thy will. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Here's the challenge that every Christian has. The challenge that every Christian has is that they say at some point in their life, I believe that you died for me, and now my heart that is full of sin needs to be cleansed by what only you can do. But then there's the next step. It's the thy will step. And a lot of Christians believe that they need a change in their life, but are not willing to bow their knee in their life. And they don't take on the thy will mindset because they keep living their life with the I will mindset. And they still, they can say the right things, they can do the right things, they can act the right way, they can fool, some of the people some of the time. But you can't fool God any of the time. And he's saying, I'm looking for a heart that surrenders fully to me. I'm looking for a person who says, I'm yours altogether. It's not with one leg in this part of the world and this leg in church or in a walk with the Lord. It doesn't work that way. You're going to be miserable if that's the case. He's saying, I'm looking for a thy will mentality. I'm not looking for someone who's going to say, you can have part of me, God, but not all of me. He wants to see his kingdom flourish in all of you, in all parts of you. That's his heart, and that's his desire. So we know that Lucifer got messed up. He started talking about the ascent that he would raise to God's throne. He tasted of that leadership and authority. He knew that God was all-powerful, and that was a huge draw. And so this ended up being the central idea around which revolved all of the sinful and rebellious activities of Lucifer, was his, I will make myself like the Most High. Now this is where we're going to go ahead and once again put our finger in Isaiah, and we're going to go to Ezekiel. Go to the book of Ezekiel, because there is a description, is a really unique story that happens in here. There's a description. And by the way, you're going to be going to the left about 3 books, maybe 4 books. Yeah, I have a hard time finding it. Ezekiel chapter 28. I think this is probably not a zone that a lot of us read all of the time. But Ezekiel chapter 28. Ezekiel chapter 28, we're going to start at verse 11. Now, this is a description, this is a story, this is a chronicle, and it says it's written to the king of Tyre, T-Y-R-E, king of Tyre, T-Y-R-E. That was an actual person I want you to see. Well, Pastor Aaron, I thought we were talking about Lucifer. Yes, let me explain something. When I started digging into who the king of Tyre was, this was a prophetic word to the king of Tyre, whose kingdom was mind-blowing. He had all sorts of authority, he had all sorts of power, he had all sorts of ability, and he lived in that and he operated in that until pride crept in and caused him to overstep everything that had been given to him. And I'm not exactly sure on where he violated certain things specifically, but the king of Tyre was the man. He really was. The king of Tyre had jewels beyond the ability to count them. And so when we read, just keep that in mind when we read the next few verses, because it speaks of, take up this lament concerning the king of Tyre, and say this to him. But I want you to see that there is so much more than just description of the king of Tyre here. That as the prophet prophesies these things and speaks these things, he drifts into speaking of things the king of Tyre could never possibly have achieved.